All right, guys, how's it going? Good? Good. Well, today we're going to learn about platform as a service and how you can use it in your own development and your own environments at your work. Disclaimer, I do work on the Openshift team at Red Hat, which is Red Hat's platform as a service. So all the demos and things I'm going to be showing you are going to be using Openshift, but I'll talk about the other big platform as a service providers out there today. So for those that don't know me, my name is Shipley. I'm a senior manager of the cloud products at Red Hat. I still code. I work on a lot of open source projects, so don't discount what I say just because I'm a manager. I've been at Red Hat for about 9 years. Before that, I worked at Novell and Caldera and Scope for 2 years. I've been a Java developer for the last 15 years, but I kind of threw away Java about 4 years ago, and I moved over to PHP of all things and Node.js recently. I'm a huge mobile developer. That's what I do in my free time. That's how I stayed technical when I became a manager. And I have a lot of apps out on the App Store. Some of my apps have been on the commercials for Apple, things like that. I do work on a lot of open source projects. Probably the biggest one is called Media Portal. It's a home theater system written in .NET for Windows users. It's kind of like Xbox Media Center, except better. All right. So what you're going to learn today is about cloud computing, the application development lifecycle with cloud computing, and tips and tricks using platform as a service. So the first thing I want to do is talk about cloud computing, because cloud computing is this nebulous term that no one really knows what it is. It's getting better. But there's 3 types of cloud computing, really, 3 big types. The first one is infrastructure as a service. And this is where all of the hardware or virtual machines provided for you, and then you have to provide everything on top of just that hardware. You still have to provision and install the operating system, install your application runtimes, databases, tune databases, set up firewall rules, apply security errata when Heartbleed comes out, stuff like that. So what's the most popular infrastructure as a service provider in the world? You win. You want a car charger? Or a regular charger? All right, so Amazon EC2 is absolutely the most popular infrastructure service provider in the world today. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of Amazon. I use it on a daily basis, and some of you may have heard me talk about this. But as a computer industry and as software developers and system administrators, in turn, we have given Amazon more control over the internet than we thought we would ever allow any single entity, including federal governments, to control. Half the internet runs through Amazon EC2. I travel a lot, and I got a call a few years ago, and this is a true story. I normally never let the truth get in the way of a good story, but this is actually the truth. My wife called me and was like, "Hey Grant, you forgot to pay the cable modem bill again." I have been known to not pay bills on time. So I put them in a big stack and they just pile up, and once every 3 months I go in and pay. But anyway, she called me and said, "You forgot to pay the internet bill because the internet shut off." And I'm like, "Well, why?" And she was like, "Well, I can't get on Pinterest." I go, "Okay, I'll look into it." 2 minutes later, my 10-year-old son called me. He was like, "Dad, my computer's broken." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, I can't watch SpongeBob on Netflix." And then all of a sudden it hit me that Amazon EC2 is probably having issues, right? And so all of these systems now go through Amazon EC2, even with Netflix Chaos Monkey Script, and there are multiple deployments in different regions and availability zones. You can still experience outages when you're in the public cloud. So that's infrastructure service. So what I would implore everyone to do is, if you're thinking about deploying things in infrastructure service, look at other alternatives. Amazon's great. If it fits your needs, use it. Google Compute Engine, Windows Azure, OpenStack if you want to do internal stuff. Rackspace has an OpenStack cloud. I think Bluehost has an OpenStack cloud that you can provision as well. So just look at alternatives. At the other end of that spectrum is called software as a service. And this is where you get software and you use it and you love it and you love what you get, right? But you can't change it. What's the most popular software as a service in the world? Gmail, you're right. You want some funny sunglasses? Charger. Here you go. Oh, thanks to Pluralsight. They gave me all this stuff to give away author for them, like make videos and crap. So Gmail is the most popular software as a service for consumers. What's the most popular one for businesses?
Salesforce.com.
Salesforce. Who said that for? So I do a lot of cloud computing talks at conferences and going into companies. And the first thing their admin team or their CIO tells me is we can never use the public cloud because we can't put our customer data in the public cloud. I'm like, okay, that's fair. What do you guys use for your sales automation tool? And they say Salesforce.com. I'm like, facepalm, right? Because everything is out in the public cloud if you're using Salesforce. All your financials, your forecasts, everything like that. So that's software as a service. Right in the middle is platform as a service. What's the most popular platform as a service in the world?
Openshift. Roku.
I wish it was Openshift.
Is it Roku?
Yeah, I'd say the Roku. You get some sunglasses.
Oh, no. So let somebody else win.
This guy said Roku first.
Oh, there you go. You want sunglasses or a charger? Charger. There you go. Thanks. Oh, bad throw. I will never make it through this. All right, so platform as a service sits right in the middle of infrastructure as a service and software as a service. If you remember with infrastructure as a service, the only thing you get is the hardware. You still have to provide your systems administrators, your ops teams, your software stacks, and you have to manage it. Software as a service is like Gmail or Salesforce. The only thing you have to bring to the table are your users of the system and the data that you want to store in the application. And platform as a service is right in the middle in that you're given the hardware and you're given all of the software, and it's managed for you. The only thing you have to provide is your application code, your users, and your data. But all of the management is done for you, so you don't have to worry about installing and tuning databases and all of that stuff. And it's actually a great place to where these two competing teams, development and system administrators, can get along. I used to manage all the system administrators at Red Hat, and also manage software engineering teams at the same time. And I never realized that this contention between the two, right? Because developers want things quick. They want to try out something new. They want virtual machines. They want a development environment that mirrors production. But the systems administrators are always concerned about real problems, right? Production uptime, stability, things like that. And kind of the developers are bottom of their list in the development environment. So with a platform as a service, it's this software layered where both of these two groups can get along. And if you're wondering, systems administrators are Darth Vader, and the good guys, Luke Skywalker, are software engineers. All right. Because, and we do this at Red Hat, or we did, all of our development environments was on virtual machines. And so what we would do is email the sysadmin team and say, hey, I need a virtual machine. And they, no joke, have a spreadsheet of available virtual machines. And they write your name next to one in the spreadsheet and then email you the connection information. You guys do this at your companies? And so then what would happen is the developer would get this virtual machine and they would have it for 6 months or 8 months. And then all of a sudden, we're out of space on the virtual machine, so it's time to clean up some of these old virtual machines. And the sysadmin team would email every developer and say, hey, we're going to delete these virtual machines in 1 month unless you email us and tell us that you're still using them. Spare request, right? How many people emailed them? 0, right? So 3 weeks to go, they send the same email. Hey, 3 weeks, we're going to delete these. Email us if you need it. No one responds. 2 weeks, hey, we're going to delete these. Email us if you're going to use it. The day before, we're going to delete this tomorrow. Email us if you're going to use it. Hey, we're deleting these in 30 minutes. Email us if you're going to use it. No one responds. The next day, why did you delete my effing virtual machine? I was waiting on this. I've been using it the whole time. And so a platform as a service can solve those problems as well. So with a platform as a service, you get a choice of pretty much any language, framework, and database that you want. Because I'm most familiar with Openshift, this is what we support. We run on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and we support everything except .NET. Sorry. .NET doesn't run on Linux. We thought about doing Mono, but that's not the case. Or Mono, I'm not a big fan of because it's always a little bit behind. So some good news. How many people are .NET developers? Anyone? Well, then you guys don't care. Oh, one person. So we do. We have announced .NET support. We've ported all of the Linux requirements for a platform as a service like Collective, which is the messaging queue. We use SE Linux, which is security enhanced Linux. We've created this new thing for Windows Server called Windows Prisons. I like the name myself. And so we've done a lot of work to have this running natively on Windows servers. So in about 3 months, you'll be able to integrate native Windows servers and native SQL servers into your environment and be able to utilize the same functionalities that you're used to with platform as a service. And as far as I know, we're the only ones to do that. And whoever thought Red Hat would get in bed with Microsoft to do something like this. So we do just have this O'Reilly book. It's not public yet. I think it gets released in about 3 weeks. But I created a promo code for people if you want to download a free copy of it. It's openshift.com/ebook/openwest. And it's a short book. It's like an intro guide. It's only about 100 pages or something like that. And it is an O'Reilly book. If you want to buy it, be my guest, but you can get it for free right here. So I'll leave that up just for a second. And if you don't like free, you can pre-order my new book that's coming out. It'll be out in September. It's more of a deep dive. It's like 360 pages or something like that. I still have 3 chapters left to go on it. I would just get the free one. All right. So I'll stop brainwashing you right now with how great Openshift is and talk about some of the competitors out there in the market. And there's a lot, and it's consolidating quickly. And I'll talk briefly about each one, and then I'll get into some demo and show how to actually use this stuff. Heroku was probably the first big platform as a service out there. They started as a Ruby environment, but have since expanded into other things. Heroku is an online hosted model only. You have to be in the public cloud. You can't run it internal on your own systems. Salesforce.com acquired them about 1.5 years ago. But they're probably the most heavily used one right now. They're also probably the most expensive one. CloudBees was created by some guys from Red Hat. Red Hat owns JBoss. If you're a Java developer, you've probably heard of JBoss. And their selling point is they consider themselves the Java PaaS company. They know it better than anyone else, apparently even us at Red Hat, who writes JBoss and maintains the OpenJDK, but that's cool. But they have great like Jenkins integration services and things like that. Windows Azure, they actually changed the name to Microsoft Azure because they didn't want it to be associated with the Windows operating system because Windows is continuing to lose market share, especially among the developer community, not so much in server space. They're not losing too much there, but when I go to conferences, I see most people using MacBooks now as opposed to Windows laptops, which is kind of a shift. So anyway, they changed the name to Microsoft Azure to get away from Windows, but it's actually a really good platform. I use it personally. It's kind of a combination with infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. They provide the infrastructure as well as platform as a service tier on top of it. They support most languages. You can also spin up Linux servers. I think they support SUSE and Red Hat to spin up. It's pretty price competitive with EC2 at the infrastructure tier. If you have a business, does anyone have an LLC or anything? Anyone? Quite a few hands went up. So Microsoft has this program called BizSpark. You guys heard of that? As long as you have a tax ID, you can sign up for their BizSpark program, and it's pretty much guaranteed acceptance. And you get basically a subscription to MSDN for free for your business, so you can use any Microsoft product for free. And you get $250 a month credit to use on Windows Azure or Microsoft Azure. So if you have an LLC, I think in Utah it's free to create one. It's probably worth it just go create one just to use Microsoft's free services. But it's pretty good. So IBM's recently announced Bluemix a couple months ago. It's basically a fork of Cloud Foundry, and their selling point is enterprise level PaaS to integrate with WebSphere and things like that. If you're an IBM shop, Cloud Foundry was created by VMware. It's the other big open source platform as a service that's not nearly as good as Openshift, which Evan gets to use every day at the LDS Church. I believe they have Cloud Foundry deployed. So VMware created it through SpringSource, that acquisition, and then spun it off to Pivotal. But EMC owns VMware and Pivotal, so that's really an EMC product, right? EMC is the storage company. They are open source. They do have a public available version. It was in beta last time I checked. I think it came out of beta now. And you can run that on-premise in your own data center or in the public cloud, wherever you want to be. It is open source. It does not do auto-scaling at the application tier, just at the infrastructure tier. And then this logo is Google App Engine, which is kind of like EC2, but they also have a PaaS, or Google Compute Cloud is like EC2, but they have a PaaS called Google App Engine that you can use. It's pretty good. Google Compute Cloud's pretty price competitive. And then Engine Yard is a single tenant platform as a service that runs on top of Amazon EC2. Mainly people use it for Ruby code. And so to use Engine Yard, you'll have to plug in your EC2 credentials and it spins up machines in your
Is Beanstalk the Amazon?
yeah, I mean, even Amazon admits that Beanstalk's not great. So I wouldn't use it. If you were looking for PaaS to use, which in my opinion, PaaS is the next big thing. Every developer in this room will probably be using it within 3 years. It's just the way things are moving because it's so cost effective and so easy to spin up new environments. It really depends on your language and what you're trying to do. If you want to have a completely open source platform as a service that runs great on Linux and is not proprietary, doesn't have proprietary APIs, like Google App Engine has proprietary APIs, where like they want you to talk to their API for their data store. Beanstalk's the same way. I would look at Cloud Foundry or Openshift, because with those two environments, you can just take your code as it is today without any modifications and deploy it onto one of those environments once you understand how to deploy things into the environment. If you wanted an on-premise product with real support behind the full stack, I'd look at Openshift. If you're an IBM shop in WebSphere, then stick with IBM Bluemix. It really just depends on your environment. There's no one answer for everything. I know a lot of people would like to think that they are the one answer, but there's not. All right, so enough of the talks. Let's actually get in and start doing stuff now. We'll see if this works. Our ops team, I was just furiously chatting with in the back. They were doing some system maintenance. So let's see how this works. This is either going to be awesome. It's going to be the worst talk you've ever experienced in your life. Can you guys see that okay? Better? Tell me when to stop.
Good.
No one's good. What? Oh. Alright, so I'm going to make a directory called Openwest here. So first I'll show you what the Openshift monster box. So with Openshift, you can interact with the platform one of three ways. You can use the web console and do everything on the web. You can use your IDE. We provide support for Eclipse. If you're an IntelliJ user, IntelliJ writes their own Openshift plugin. If you're a PHP user, Zen Studio, we have a partnership with Zen. They write their own plugin for it. If you're a mobile developer and a Titanium developer, they have integration. So most IDE has an integration with Openshift, simply because we've gotten so popular. Over the last 2 years, we've had our last public number we announced was 1.6 million applications running on top of the public Openshift platform. So if I log into the platform here, it'll drop me onto the dashboard to show you all the applications you have running. I have 24 servers running right now, and you can see, the name of the application. Here's my personal blog. It's actually scaled up right now to 2 servers, so some spam bot must be hitting my WordPress instance or something, sending me a bunch of comments to delete. But it actually automatically scaled up to 2 servers. I don't know if I have any others scaled up right now. So here's a demo that I did, scale me that I'm running with 4 servers. And then, so I'll just start with creating an application, show you guys how to do this. So you want to create an application on the platform. You click on Add Application, and you have a choice of all of these cartridges, is what we call them. So I'm getting old now. I'm almost 38. And as a kid, we used to have the Nintendo system, you know, the original Nintendo system. So that's the console. You can think of that as the platform as a service. But to make that console usable, you'd have to plug cartridges into the system right after you glue on them and then put them in. You can think of platform as a service, and Openshift is the same way. The platform is the system, but it's not usable until you add cartridges, which would be runtimes. And so when I want to create a new application, the first thing I have to do is choose my cartridge. And you can scroll down and choose one. If you wanted to just create a WordPress app real quick, Openwest, WordPress. There's these things called instant applications that automatically pulls the WordPress source code from GitHub. Automatically knows that it has a dependency on PHP and MySQL. And you just click Create Application. And assuming that my Openshift system is working, which may or may not happen if someone hasn't fixed it in the last 10 minutes. In about 30 seconds, you'll have a complete WordPress environment set up and running. And so that would be good if you're using a PaaS internal to your company and you wanted each department to be able to self-service, creating their own department wikis or whatever the case may be. It's also usable if you are a development team. One of the biggest pains when hiring new developers is getting them up to speed, getting all the software downloaded, built, and deployed. You can create one of these quick starts. It takes 20 minutes. And then when a new developer joins the team, they can just click a button and have everything set up and running. And then just focus on learning the code versus learning the build environment and all this stuff that's not really relevant to them. Give us a second, see if it works here. While that's spinning up, I'm going to spin up the virtual machine here where I do my Java development and show you guys the IDE integrations. And yes, don't heckle me. I work at Red Hat and I use Linux. Yeah. You know, the first talk I did when I joined the Openshift team, I was at the Ohio Linux Fest, and I was using Ubuntu, and there was 30 tweets instantly. Red Hat suggests running Ubuntu instead of Fedora. Not the case. I just use what I like. Yeah, we're still having issues. So I'll show you, let's see what I got running here. Eclipse. So that's starting. I'll talk about auto scaling real quick. So with traditional scaling, you'll have this big server, right? This is called vertical scaling. And it'll, when there's a problem, you'll add, another 32 gigs of RAM, right? Or you'll add, 8 CPUs or whatever, right? That's vertical scaling. One box, very huge, run multiple applications on it. So that is the architecture of yesteryear in IT. So now what we're seeing is what's called horizontal scaling. So instead of having one big box, you would have your application clustered across multiple smaller size boxes. These may just be, 1 gig of RAM each or whatever. And then all these would be fronted with a load balancer to balance load across all these servers. And so you need to understand that concept when you start thinking about platform as a service, because Openshift will automatically scale your application up based on the amount of HTTP traffic that your application is getting. By default, it's set to, if you have more than 20 concurrent HTTP requests to your application, what we do is you'll start with 1 gear, right, or 1 cartridge, we'll say, and this is a PHP app. When this gets more than 20 connections, we actually recognize this. We add a HA proxy load balancer, we create another gear, and then we rsync your code to this new gear. And then we add it into rotation and then start balancing. And this will continue to happen until you're satisfying the traffic demands for your application, which is very important to have, especially if you're a startup or if you're writing a mobile back end or something like that, because your app may be featured on the App Store and suddenly you get all this traffic. Your app may be on Hacker News or Slashdot, and you'll get all these, we used to call it Slashdot effect, although Slashdot's going to be dead in about another 8 to 12 months. So that term won't really matter anymore. But when that happens, your application needs to be up and running, and so with this system it will. And then we continue to examine your traffic, and then if you're below 80% capacity over a 20-minute period, we actually sever this connection, lead off all the remaining connections, and then take it out of rotation. Okay? And that way session state. And this is mostly just important for PHP and other languages that don't have built-in session clustering. If you're talking about JGloss or whatever, it manages sessions state across all the nodes. And so we would just sever it and you would just go to the next server. Yeah.
This is out of scope. Let me know, but can you horizontally scale data, data engines?
Like databases?
Oracle, or
yeah.
do you use a NoSQL database to spin up and spin down instances?
So that is a very good question. And today you can, but you would have to use a cartridge that supports that. So out of the box, like the MySQL, Mongo, Redis cartridges that we provide are not scalable by default.
So those all talk to one
Yeah,
database?
so it would look like this. This would be Mongo, right? And so the problem with this is that if this dies, your application's down, right? But you can scale this out with add-on cartridges for partners. You can do replicas or sharding or whatever you want to do there. But what we're finding, most people who have this deployed, especially in an enterprise type environment, they are not using the database tier in the PaaS because they have a $6 million Oracle rack server over here that their DBA team manages, and all of these apps talk to their existing database.
So as far as geographical scaling, because you may have data centers in other continents that help feed things faster, but the database still centrally located in one place.
So that's correct. I didn't want this
Is
to
that a
sound
huge issue, or
too much like an Openshift product pitch, but so first of all, Openshift is the only PaaS that will do this automatically. Cloud Foundry will automatically scale up your infrastructure tier to add more hosts to the environment, but not your application tier. So another thing we also support is, so let's say you had EC2, you had Google Compute Engine, you had Azure, and you had OpenStack internal, and you originally deployed all of your applications internal, right? What we do support is the ability to have, and this all talks to like one central Openshift node or broker. You can have additional nodes for the platform. My drawing is getting pretty bad. And then when this scale event, hopefully this is not getting too complicated. This is like really deep down in the internals of OpenShift. When a scale event happens, you can set rules on where to actually scale your application. So if you always wanted to scale to a different data center, you could do that. and then your application would be served across multiple geos throughout the world. But your database, to answer your question, really depends on how you set up the database, right? If you have it replicated across different data centers, yeah, sure. As long as you're talking, some of those accounts are looking something. All right, so here is my Eclipse platform. So to create a new application on Openshift, you just say new file, other, and scroll down to the Openshift application. And what account am I? So you can then authenticate. And then password again. And then it connects to your Openshift account and allows you to specify the domain you want to create this application in. You can think of a domain as like a namespace. It's where all of your applications live. It's a unique URL just for your application. So, for example, this is one of my applications that's running on Openshift. You can see the URL is mlbparks-pack.rhcloud.com. And the reason this is taking so long to spin up, and this is very critical for you to understand if you're using the platform, it took like 20 seconds, right? Or 15 seconds. Why? Anyone know? That's because this application hasn't been accessed in over 24 hours. And so what we do is, and this is very beneficial to development teams, is if you receive no HTTP requests for 24 hours, we serialize your application runtime's database to disk, terminate all the processes. And then the next time an HTTP request comes in, we deserialize that application from disk and spin it back up. So the first time you hit it, it takes like 15, 20 seconds to pull the application up as we're restarting all these services. And this is a Java EE application running on JBoss EAP 6. So that's why it took a little longer. PHP is real fast to spin back up from disk. So anyway, let's clone this application into our Eclipse environment. I can say use existing application. I can browse. Here's the applications I have. OK. Click on next. Create a new project. Create a new. Already have a project. And it's just going to clone that source code from my PaaS. Most PaaS today use Git, and so that's how you interact with them. So all I'm doing is a Git clone, and it's making a copy of that project that's deployed. And let me switch out of debug here. And then you can see that that project we just saw on the web is now in my Eclipse environment, and I can make a change. Let's go to web app, index. I'll just make a quick HTML change. Push it right. Save this, then I can right click on this, go to team, commit the changes, and then once they're committed, the way you deploy new applications out to the environment is with a simple git push command. So that's how you would do it from inside of the IDE. Go back here. I'm going to create an application on the command line. I'll just use PHP because it's so quick. We'll make some changes. We'll add a database, and we'll go from there. So I can say RHC app create. So that's the command to do it. RHC is the command line tools. We call this Openwest PHP. You can specify the cartridge you want to use. We'll just use PHP 5.4. And then if you want your application to automatically scale, you can pass in the -s operation. So this is going to go ahead and create that application for me. You notice it didn't ask me to authenticate. That's because when you set up the command line tools, it generates SSH keys for you, and all authentication happens via SSH keys, and then it generates a token for you as well. So what's actually happening right now, when I issued that command, is it's talking to Openshift, and it's saying, hey, someone wants to create a new application. Where can we do this? It connects to all of the nodes in the PaaS. One will respond and say, yeah, I have room. And it'll then create that application gear on that node. And what that consists of is creating a user account for you on that node, setting up and installing Apache and mod PHP in this example, applying any recent security updates that needs to be supplied. It's in that needs to be applied. It's setting up SE Linux, security enhanced Linux, so you only have access to your gear or your cartridge, your application. It's applying the Linux control groups or C groups policies. That's how we segment CPU, RAM, disk space. We use Linux control groups, which is built into the kernel, to specify how much resources or how many resources your application has access to. It's setting up a private Git repository on your remote gear. It's propagating DNS out worldwide, so your app's available instantly, and then it'll lastly clone that Git repository. And it normally takes about 10 seconds. I don't know why it's slow right now. At least it's working. It wasn't even working before because they were pushing updates. So let's set this new node host. We now have an application running. You can pull it up in your own browser. If you don't believe me, it'll be Openwest, what do I call it? Openwest PHP. -- PaaS is my domain name. You can, of course, use your own domain name. And this will pull up a templated application. So that's cool, but let's change it. Let's go into openwest.php. And we can look at our directory. We just have the index.php file here. So I've added a new file. First thing you want to do is commit it or add it to your repository, then you commit it. And then you push those changes up. So what's happening is taking that new source file that I committed to my local repository, pushing those changes up to my remote Openshift server. And the workflow is basically the same with Cloud Foundry as well. So it's activating my deployment. So what that means is whenever you do a deployment, we actually track that. And you can revert to any previous deployment at any point in time with a single command. You can roll back. You can keep as many deployments as you want. If you push a code change out and you realize there's a bug in it that has to be resolved, you can just roll back in like 2 seconds or something like that. So we do track all of that, including binary deployments. So then if we go back to our application here and go to openwest.php, you can see that we created an application, added the source file, pushed it out in about a minute. So that's cool, but let's add a MySQL database. And to do that, you say RHC cartridge add MySQL, and then we're going to add it to openwest.php. And the first thing it tells me is it has no idea what I'm talking about when I say add MySQL, because there's different versions. So you have to specify the version of the database you want to embed into your application. Say 5.5. And now what's happening is it's communicating the arrest to the Openshift server, and it's spinning up a MySQL database, creating a username and password for you and a default schema, and it'll display those credentials for me. What's important to understand is that when you create a MySQL database or a Mongo database, that is your database. It's a private database. It runs inside of your user space, so no one else has access to that data space. And with SE Linux, even if someone exploited the system to get root level permissions, they wouldn't be able to look at it because it's built into the kernel. All right, so our database has been set up and running. Here's our username and password. It created a default database. So the next nice thing you can do with the platform as a service is this platform as a service automates all this stuff for you, so you don't need to go in and manage the system. But if you wanted to, you can. You can SSH into the system just by typing in RHC app SSH, and it's going to connect me. This is just a or an alias. The actual command is just SSH, this long user ID, and then my host name if you wanted to manually SSH in. So I'm setting on my remote Openshift server, which is actually running in EC2, and you can do, whatever you would expect to do. VI/XE.
This is quite powerful.
Shadow.
You could accidentally damage your application.
So you can screw things up?
You can't.
Oh, you can't?
Because SC Linux, right? You can't view certain things. Like, this is my home directory. If I go back a directory and do ls, it's going to tell me I can't, right? But,
If you disable SE Linux.
but you can't disable SC
Oh, you
Linux.
can't?
No, you can't. So what we are working on is we're the next generation of platform as a service. And we think this is great, but we think there's a lot of room for improvement in this stuff. So we're working with a lot of different companies, namely Docker, to where in the future, when you spin up an Openshift gear, you'll actually be spinning up a Docker container. And inside of that Docker container, you can be running Ubuntu or whatever you want in your container while it's running on the realm. And SE Linux will be disabled. Inside of your container, they'll be enforcing from the OS level. That makes sense? Okay, so we're SSHing. We created a database. Let's connect to it just by typing MySQL. We can use Openwest PHP. We can create a table. It's been a long time since I've used MySQL. So create table users, username, insert into So the only reason I'm doing that is to show you do have full admin access over the database. You can create new schema, you can insert, whatever you expect to do just in case this database is running locally. So that's the next question. This database is running on your Openshift server that's out in the cloud somewhere. So how do you actually import data and use like your ERD tools or whatever the case may be? You can't, because the only system that can connect to this database is the server that your application is running on. But because we allow SSH access, you can actually port forward. So if I do RHC port forward, it'll actually connect out to my remote Openshift server, scan for all the available ports that I have running on my application, and then forward them locally. So now I can connect to my MySQL database just by hitting local.
That's awesome.
And so we do that for everything, including remote debugging. If you have Xdebug for PHP or you want to enable JPDA for remote Java debugging, you start port forwarding, and then you can connect to the remote debug port and step through your code that's running on the deployed server. Let's go back to Openshift.com and see if our WordPress application that I forgot about ever got deployed. There it is. So Openshift WordPress. Click on that. It'll take us to our WordPress install that we did at the beginning. We can create a title for this. We'll call it Openwest. Username is admin. Password is password. If you want to log in, that's right.
Very.
And then we install WordPress. Okay. So now our WordPress is up and running. Click on login. On WordPress, you can do it. And after you're logged in, it's just a standard WordPress. You install themes and plugins and create posts and do whatever the case may be. So now that we have our WordPress application up and running, it's kind of lame because we don't want that big long URL. So I'll show you how to add your own custom domain and SSL certificates to your applications. Here's our Openshift WordPress. And just click the change button, and we want to call this Openwest. Or you can upload my SSL certificates, click on save. And assuming that you own that domain name, which I don't, so this won't work, it actually creates a vhost for you, but you are still responsible for creating that CNAME record with your DNS provider to point traffic to your server, and then they'll start responding on that URL that you provided. Okay. Also, I want to show you guys about PaaS. Any questions about PaaS? Yeah.
How are teams using this with continuous integration servers? Do you guys have a RESTful API or some kind of programmatic interface for spinning up a platform and then tearing it down after build?
Yeah, so we actually support continuous integration right inside of the platform. So you notice when I did a git push before, it pushed directly to my server. So if you have a CI server set up, which I do for this domain, this is a Jenkins CI server. So, I forget what the URL is for my CI server, but you spin up a Jenkins server, for example, and then you add the Jenkins cartridge to your applications, just like I have in MySQL. You would just add Jenkins, and then from then on, any build or any push that you do with your code actually gets pushed to the CI environment. Then all tests are ran, and if it's success, then they'll deploy out to your application code. But it's just a standard CI server, so if you didn't want to, deploy after a build, you can configure all of that. Yeah.
So do you have a list of all your cartridges you own?
No, well, I don't know. Well, if you want the ones that are officially supported by Red Hat, you can do RHC cartridge list. And these are, the ones that we ship ourselves and support. And then there's hundreds of available ones out there. So I forgot to mention the best thing about Openshift, even the online version, which I've been using, is completely free. We don't charge for it. So you can spin up to 3 servers for free. The only thing we ask is for your email address and a password. We don't even ask for your first name or anything like that. So you can spin up to 3 of these servers. And then obviously we have paid plans on top of that if you actually need to call support. If something goes bad, you call us up and it's typically red.
Do you know of any companies, especially here in Utah, that are using enterprise OpenShift?
Some big companies that I can talk about that have standardized on OpenShift Enterprise are PayPal. They use it. DreamWorks uses it for all of their mobile games backends and for DVD and movie releases. If you think of a company like DreamWorks, when they have a movie, their sites are real popular, and so it has to scale up. But then when the movie comes out of theaters, it's not popular, so it automatically scales down and may even go idle. And then when the Blu-ray or the Academy Awards come out, then it can scale back up, so they use it. Federal government uses it for most of their stuff. Just Cisco, Boeing, lots of huge customers. OpenShift Enterprise is for huge deployments, thousands and thousands of servers. We have one company running 64,000 Java virtual machines. Yeah.
What kind of infrastructure is required for OpenShift Enterprise?
That's the great thing is we're infrastructure agnostic. We don't care where you run it or what you run it on. You can run it on VMware or whatever. As far as core memory, all of the servers for our public environment are running on EC2 as large instances, so 8 gigs of RAM. And we have 1.5 million applications. Because you remember, it's horizontal scaling, not vertical, right? So then you just have to decide your density on each of those servers. How many apps do you want to cram on a single node and configure all of it? Yeah.
So you have something similar to Akamai, I guess, addresses the geographical
Well,
scaling.
so we don't provide a CDN out of the box. You would just, if you're talking about, are you talking about OpenShift Enterprise on premise or like the public hosted version?
Public.
We use Akamai for that. So all of your apps that are fronted with that by default. But you can plug in whatever you use. I don't use Akamai personally. I switch it out with Cloudflare. That's what I use. All right, let's go back real quick and wrap it up here. All right, so if you have questions, this is how you can contact me. That's the free ebook URL again. The entire Openshift team hangs out on Freenode and pound Openshift. There I am on Twitter. This is my personal blog, which I'm planning on putting ads on. So I'm trying to drive on track. I only blog like once every 6 months. Blogs are kind of dead, right? You can still blog. Yeah, no one blogs anymore. It's kind of dead. And then if you want to look at like, you know, that baseball application that I showed, which is the geospatial one with the map, total it's about 50 lines of code. If you're interested in geospatial stuff or any of my sample applications, they're all on GitHub. That's my GitHub URL. All right, if you wanted a Pluralsight thing, come up and get one. It's a free month of online training. But anyway, thanks for coming, guys. Really appreciate it.